SYS presents Adventures in Online Education.
Welcome, online educators. You're listening to SYS Presents Adventures in Online Education, where we discuss the realities of virtual education and bring you the best tools for the job from the experts, virtual teachers like you. I'm your host, Natalie Conway. Today, we dive into a topic that gets more attention every year, inquiry-based learning. My guest today is Stephanie Rothstein. She has been an educator for 18 years, is a mentor, speaker, writer, as well as a Google Innovator, trainer, and coach. She is an EdTech TOSA, teacher on special assignment, for Los Gatos, Saratoga School District in California, co-chair of a design thinking pathway, and teacher of English 9. Stephanie is most proud of her TedX Talk, My Year of Yes to Me, published on TED.com, writing multiple articles for Edutopia, creating CanWeTalkEDU, and co-founding Global GEG. She advocates for always modeling the risks we expect and earned her admin credential with the plan to always support others on their journeys. I am so thankful for Stephanie's time today, and I know you're going to really appreciate hearing from her. She's going to highlight how she engages students in inquiry-based learning by using the 3 Ds. She recently co-wrote an Edutopia article on this subject entitled Discover, Discuss, Demonstrate, using inquiry-based learning to keep students engaged, with Lainie Rowell. You don't want to miss this. Let's learn something new. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Natalie. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yay. Well, we met on Twitter, which is so fun. I am new to Twitter this school year. I just got on this past fall, and it's been really neat connecting with all different people. Have you been on Twitter a while? Is that how you're kind of connecting to teachers?
You know, that's really interesting. I wasn't using Twitter really until the last 2 years or so. Prior to that, I went to a conference and I had someone at a conference say, everybody needs to get on Twitter. And I made a handle. And that was a few years before that. And then I never used it. And then all of a sudden, I started to get more and more involved in different educational communities and realized, okay, I am working in a space where I'm promoting technology and I need to actually see what other people are using outside. So Twitter has become my best friend. I have met so many people that way, and I am so grateful that I have a space where I can connect with people. And I feel like I know them even though we haven't met in person. So it's really wonderful, like people at any time of the day or a night to just reach out, ask a question and get feedback and share ideas. It's been really wonderful.
I'm impressed with how positive it is. I feel like I've obviously chosen to connect with educators and people in the field of education. And it's just so positive. For social media, it's a really positive platform that I'm okay checking every day. I don't feel too bad about it.
I think the piece that I like about it is that you're seeing who you want to see, right? There's good and bad to that for sure. But for me, I'm focused on just wanting to see things about education, and that's why I'm there. And so it allows me to kind of filter out all of the extraneous noise. And it lets me connect with who I want to connect with. So I like that a lot.
Yeah. What are you up to in education these days? Can you let our audience know kind of your role, where you're at?
Sure. Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm busy, but happily busy. So I am an 18-year educator. I'm a mentor to people at my own district and beyond. I've been doing speaking and a lot of writing. I've been writing a lot of articles. I got published this year, 5, coming on 6 articles. I have a new one coming out in Edutopia. And my role is I am a TOSA, a teacher on special assignment in my school district. That's at the Los Gatos Saratoga Union High School District. It's a long mouthful to say. I also co-chair a design thinking pathway there, and that has afforded me a great deal of learning and growth over the last 10 years. And I think I said I've been in education for 18 years, and then my background is that I'm an English teacher, so I teach the English 9 component of that. Along the way, I've done some TED Talk working, TedX talks that have gone on TED, a lot of writing. And then I created CanWeTalkEDU. It's just been a really profound journey, I think. And I'm moving more into educational leadership more and more, but loving continuing to be in the classroom and mentoring and supporting educators throughout the process and students.
You are very busy. I love that breadth of experience you have and that you're having currently. It's so cool. And we're here today to talk about an article that you wrote on Edutopia. So let's dive in. You recently co-wrote an article with Lainie Rowell entitled Discover, Discuss, Demonstrate, Using Inquiry-Based Learning to Keep Students Engaged. What sparked your desire to write that article?
Oh my goodness. So I actually met Lainie at a conference. We both spoke at the same conference that we attended together. And after hearing her speak on the 3D model, we spoke and connected after the session. And so I found that so much of what she was sharing resonated with me and what I was already doing in my classroom. I had already written some articles at that point for Edutopia. And so Lainie and I, after speaking and connecting right after that conference virtually, she asked if we should try to co-write a piece that was rooted in the 3D practice. And so it ended up being the perfect balance. She brought the model and then I brought the application to the classroom. And that's how that article came about.
That's a neat partnership. What specifically resonated with you? Were there aspects that spoke to your philosophy of education or pedagogical approaches you knew?
So Lainie's work, it takes the pedagogical practices and all the ideas around structuring, planning, time, class, and she focuses it down really into three main parts. And for me, that focus was really what is key. So it encompasses so much in discover, discuss, and demonstrate. And really the whole focus of all of it is how do we grow engagement? And so that was the focus of the article, was that using this practice, using this model as a way to ensure that we are fostering engagement, and that is what we are working on doing both for students and educators the entire time of the process.
And that is not even a buzzword right now. I don't want to say that, but it's just a word I hear all the time. And many educators want to engage in more inquiry-based learning with students, but they're not sure how to get started. And I think we all know that engagement is key to learning. If kids aren't engaged, they're not going to learn anything. So the 3Ds give a framework. The first is discover. Can you explain to us what Discover looks like in the virtual classroom? How does it tie in maybe with flipped class model? What role do EduProtocols play? All of that.
Happy to. So whether you're virtual or flipped or in person, Discover has the same elements. So for me, I'm always asking myself, what can we begin with that will help students have a rush of questions and spark interest and connection? That really is what that discover part is all about. And one way is an empathy interview where they ask others to share their needs or experiences that would help them better understand what they're studying or creating. So in my classroom, we are always doing things where students are propelled, and I don't like to use the word push, so they're propelled to ask questions. I want it to be a true choice for them and that they feel motivated to do so. And then in terms of EduProtocols that you brought up, I love them because they are a practice that is quick, but it is thin slides is probably my favorite of the EduProtocols.
All right, I am learning so much here already. 5 minutes in. Help me out a little. What are thin slides, and what exactly is an EduProtocol? Can you define that for us?
Okay, happy to. So I did not create EduProtocols. They're amazing. They're out there. John Crippo, there's a ton out there. But EduProtocols are an adaptive lesson framework, and it puts students at the center. So when you're thinking like, oh my goodness, how do I do this every single day? It's that the student is at the center doing the work, and I, as the teacher, am there facilitating that learning. So the thin slides is you can share a term, a concept, or a word, and students take 1 to 2 minutes to look up information and learn something about it. You can really adapt it in any way. And they're putting it, the reason it's called thin slides is that it's short. So you're only giving them a couple of minutes, maybe 1 minute really, sometimes 30 seconds, but you're giving them 1 to 2 is the practice. They look it up and then they put something on the slide. It isn't about the slide looking pretty. It really is about them getting that content there with a visual. And so we need to embrace what can be researched by students and then help them go deeper and ask questions about why. And so Discover is really about an experience. It could even be beyond other things in EduProtocols. It could be reading a letter, it could be watching a mini TED Talk, it could be looking at a piece of art or listening to a song, researching information, but it is about how to help students with that process of discovery and coming to their own questions about that discovery.
That is awesome. We've talked a lot on the podcast already about the fact that kids can Google answers, kids can Google information, and that is what we do next. Then what? What do we do with that information? So it sounds like thin slides and this EduProtocol could really help teachers in meeting that what do I do next step. That is really cool. We'll have links in the show notes to more information and examples of thin slides and EduProtocols. Can you give us a specific example of a Discover move you've used or seen a teacher use successfully?
Okay, there are so many. One that I saw that I really liked was from George Barcenas, and he does so many things that lead to discovery. He does this awesome practice where he has an image on a slide. So when we were talking about thin slides, it connects in some ways, but he covers the entire image with a series of black boxes or shapes. And then he slowly starts to remove them one by one on it. And with each one, he says to the students, I want you to ask questions or make predictions. And so they're sharing that aloud or writing that in a chat if you were doing it virtually. And it is all about helping them to frame that image for themselves and to begin to think, why are they making particular assumptions? Why do you think that about this? And then Lainie used a picture reveal during that session when I saw her presenting, and then she used the QFT protocol, which is the question formulation technique. And the idea was to reveal as many questions as we had about that image. And both of those practices use images. You don't always have to, but I found that it's a wonderful way for Discover. Yeah. And in my class, we've done many of these. I'm currently in the process of doing our service learning unit. So we split the class into groups. And normally, if it wasn't COVID, we would split and actually go out in the field. We'd go on a field trip. They'd go to service organizations. They would be out in the world doing community service, and they would come back. We usually split into between 6 and 8 different locations. I take all of my classes at once. I have parents help. It's a whole giant field trip. And then when they come back, after going to the service organizations, they come back and share about the groups that they went and worked with. And after this, students ask one another questions. They think about what they liked and what they didn't like about that particular topic and how they would want to use that information to help them ask deeper questions and pick a direction for the project. So they always come back remembering what that information was that they had at their fingertips. And so the idea is that it's about helping students discover their own thoughts and their own questions about it. I initially ask them what their initial interest is in terms of what they would like to do for a topic for service, and I try to place them at a location that they think would be of interest. And this helps them really root out, is that true? Are my initial predictions correct? Did I like this? And then they can still be an expert on that organization for other students. And then students can discover information that helps them make better decisions about going further in a project. It really puts students at the center of what they're doing.
I love that level of metacognition you're getting as well. You're working at, the top of blooms for so much of this time. And the fact that kids are thinking about their thinking, maybe they're thinking about their biases or their prejudices, or even just thinking, oh, I thought I was really into this. So, it turns out I am not. And that's okay. And they've learned it in school before they've invested, in a college or maybe some other training. So I think that sounds really valuable and really helpful. We'll have a link in the show notes too, if teachers want to learn more about the question formulation technique, the QFT. I've just dived into that this year myself. You mentioned that. It's really powerful. I love that this kind of teaching you're talking about isn't just about a standard or a set of standards. It's about the process of learning and the process of thinking about our learning. So thank you so much for what you've shared so far. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we will talk more about discover and discuss and all of this wonderful teaching strategy. SYS is an online management company that takes a different approach. We partner with schools to manage solutions. Whether you are a district adding an online option for students or an online school looking to go in a new direction, SYS Education can help make it exactly what you need it to be, with high-quality products at a fraction of the cost that schools pay to other companies. We are not just an educational consulting company, we are online educators ourselves, and a tech team like no other. Let us help you bring your online school experience to the next level. Find out more at syseducation.org or by emailing info@syseducation.org. Set up your free consultation meeting to discuss how SYS might be able to help your school. Welcome back, friends. Okay, so we have students researching, we have them questioning, we've sparked some interest and maybe even debated about the topic of study. Step 2 is discuss. Can you explain to us what that looks like? Is it highly structured? Is it teacher guided?
So discuss is that time really when students take a deep dive into the content. And I chair a pathway that is project-based design thinking. So my students, for that, we use a lot of breakout spaces for partners, for small groups, where they might have a shared slide or a Jamboard or a document to track their communication. And so it's really about utilizing students as leaders as part of station rotation, which is also quite helpful. And it's important to think about what will help propel the discussion forward and what really allows them to be owners of their own process and tracking it and reflecting as they're doing it. And so it's about thinking about different opportunities to have content to discuss with others, with themselves, or with the teacher. So they could read, watch, listen, create content even for future years of station rotation.
That sounds so exciting. I want to be a kid in that class so much. Can you tell us more about what that looks like in a virtual class? Is there a lesson or maybe an example you could share?
I am happy to. We have had so much learning happen over this time of being virtual. And I would say that some of our math teachers at our school have started to use Flipgrid, and I have loved it. They've been asking their students to really talk through the math problems and how they solved them. We've used that in my own English class as well. And really that reflection process on their process, right? That meta of the during. They're still doing the work, but having them reflect during the process to help them understand what they don't understand and maybe understand their questions is part of that process of discuss. And by saving some of them and keeping them, you then can have a bank of them to use later on. So especially for those math teachers, that one has been super powerful, that now instead of having just the teacher there as one voice explaining content, they then have a bank of information. They have all of these Flipgrid videos of students explaining a problem. And sometimes students can hear it better from another voice of a student in the classroom. It helps them start to feel more confident, to share their ideas. And it can be a really wonderful way in if you're trying to bridge the gap between students feeling confident to share when they are live or in synchronous instruction. Having them do it asynchronously tends to be a really nice way to help bring students into feeling confident to do that in the classroom.
Absolutely. That accessibility and that aspect of universal design where you can in Flipgrid, stop and re-record, trash one you didn't like, do it again, that kind of thing. So that flexibility, that kind of pressure off. And Andrew Sinkowski was on the podcast a few episodes back talking about math instruction and the value, like you just said, of having student voices there and students explaining the math to one another. I'm picturing, a Flipgrid series where it's almost your own Khan Academy for your class, by your class. That would be really engaging and really really powerful and empowering for students. I'm wondering if even having students create their own anchor charts would work here. They could collaborate to develop the chart or notes for peers, revise and edit as they learn more, realize what they don't know. Or even a discussion board if you're a Canvas user, where students are posting and revisiting their peers' ideas throughout the week. The options seem very plentiful. So now on to the third aspect, demonstrate. This isn't the end necessarily though, right? How does a teacher engage students in this step, and how is it circular instead of linear within this inquiry process?
Oh, it is so important that it is thought of as circular. There are so many pivots and alterations and revamps along the way, and that is part of a process that is a thinking process. To say that something is linear would not make any sense because we wouldn't actually be growing. So it's circular because you should be demonstrating throughout the entire process, and you should be receiving feedback the entire way through. So without this, you're just waiting and waiting, and then does feedback really have any meaning if you're not getting it until the end when you can't do anything about it?
Absolutely. This ties into so much of the discussion about assessment too right now, right? We just had an episode about assessment, and our speakers highlighted the fact that the circular process of continuous feedback is essential for learning, kindergarten through high school. I'm just so glad you mentioned that. Okay, go on.
So I would say that one of my favorite ways to be doing this ending, quote unquote, since it's never an end, is really about having an authentic audience. And you can invite guests in throughout the entire process. It doesn't just have to be as a culminating piece. I have found that it's really wonderful to invite guests, or whether you're in person or virtual, to be there, to listen, to provide feedback, to be a contributing expert on a topic. And if we think about ways to involve their voice in that classroom and to involve student voice and choice in the demonstration, it ends up leading to greater success. There's a lot more buy-in for students. They understand that this authentic audience is meaningful. And we have done it in all of the projects of my classes this year. And it really is at the heart of what I do.
And I'm thinking now in virtual settings, it might be even easier to get a greater variety of guests into your digital virtual classroom. You can invite people from out of state or even from a different country to be experts and to talk to kids throughout the process, which is really exciting to think about. And this all speaks really to the heart of project-based learning, your path for this inquiry-based learning process. So many teachers and educators are looking to make lessons online that truly relate to students' lived experiences. Do you have students come up with a method they'll use to demonstrate, or the individuals they'd invite or communicate their learning to?
Oh, I love this question. And I actually, as you were talking, it made me think that I wrote an article last year for Edutopia at the end of when I thought that this might be closer to the end of where we were during COVID. And I wrote it in May of last year of 2020. And it was about some of the best takeaways. And one of the best takeaways from this has really been me to realize how great it is to actually invite guests in virtually, just as what you were saying, which is that I get a variety of people and I actually can get so many more coming in virtually. So I have a ton of open-ended projects. One of the things that I've learned is that I do need to provide students with some bumpers. Like when you think about bumper lane bowling, they need a few. And it really is that I teach 9th grade. And so I'm always trying to think, like, what is that end goal? And so if the goal is really about helping them grow in a particular area of skill, then do I want the tool to get in the way of them demonstrating that? So often when we think about presenting to a panel, we might end up having them use a slide. We might provide a template that is on that slide for them. My students, I'm so proud of them, and they're super creative and they can take things and run with it. And I never want to box them in. But what I also don't want to do is I don't want them to stare at a blank slide and have that become something that overwhelms them. If the purpose is that they are focused on the content, the skill of speaking, then I want to give them a chance to demonstrate that. If we're focused on the visual, then for sure, I'm going to guide them through that process. I would say it is challenging to do both at the same time and both while virtual. So I might use an initial presentation at the start of the year to focus on how to do things in a visually appealing way and go over visual ways to set up a slide and where to have blank space and how to know how much writing you should have. And we use that time to do it so then they feel confident in that regard. And then the next presentation will focus on oral communication. But to ask that they do everything all at once, I think we need to take it in a slower rollout. Some of the things that I end up doing with them is we end up having, I think I've given you a closing slideshow where students each had a particular slide. And one of the projects that we did that with was our travel blog that was earlier in the year. So students were traveling the path of Odysseus, and we're creating travel blogs for a travel company. And then they've used Canva or Adobe Spark to help students create presentations as well. And I just think it's really important that the tool is not what is getting in the way, but instead actually opening the door. And that for me is probably some of the most important pieces that I've learned, especially while being virtual. If I'm there in person with a student, I can walk over and very quickly show them how to do something on a device. But it is a lot more challenging to do that in a virtual space where I'm not sure where their mouse is going, what they're doing, and they're showing me their screen. And so I want to make sure that they have the tools in front of them to do it, and that they understand the expectations and that they go well beyond any of that. But I don't want me to be the limiting factor or the tool to be the limiting factor to them demonstrating their success or understanding of the content.
Absolutely. That's such an important consideration and something we need to keep in the forefront of our planning and thinking every time, every lesson, every project. So thank you for giving us permission to not ask kids to do it all the time too. And the same for us as educators. I think it's good, those small bites and focusing in on what it is we're looking to accomplish or learn. Again, we are going to have links to all of the great resources and tools that Stephanie has mentioned. Stephanie, thank you so much for your time today. It's been awesome learning from you. Where and how can listeners connect with you further?
I am happy to stay in contact with anyone and everyone. I love it. For me, I often talk about liking being a thought partner with people. So please connect with me, be a thought partner. On Twitter, you can find me at Steph_EdTech for education technology. So Steph_EdTech. You can email me at steph@stephedtech.com. And then you can look up any of my presentations or articles or anything on my website, which is www.stephedtech.com.
Awesome. Thanks again, Stephanie. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing all your wonderful inspiration with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of SYS Presents Adventures in Online Education. Special thanks go out to my guest today, Stephanie Rothstein. Today, we learned that there are a lot of tools at our disposal for engaging students in genuine inquiry-based learning. We also learned that we don't have to try to do it all at once. Taking small steps and changing a single aspect of our instruction, like using an image to spark discussion, or trying out thin slides for quick discovery of new information, can really ignite a lesson or a unit. As always, we have links in the show notes to Stephanie's Edutopia article and all the resources she mentioned in this episode. If you liked what you heard, please hit the subscribe button. This podcast wouldn't be possible without our team at SYS Education, including our producer, Bo Neal, and our magical sound engineers, Natalie Farrell and Matt Duran. Want more? Check us out at syseducation.org/AOE and find us on Twitter. You can find me, Natalie Conway, at AOE Natalie, and the show at SYS Presents. Thanks for listening. Remember to subscribe and always keep learning. You've got this.